From the heart of Maine, this is the DuView Podcast.
And welcome to this week's episode of the DuView Podcast. I am your host, Du, aka Ryan Dumont. And this week, for our 10th and very special episode here, we are joined by my guest, musician and musical educator, Marcia Gallagher. Marcia, thank you so much for coming on.
You are so welcome. I'm looking forward to it. Should be fun.
Appreciate it. So Marcia and I do have a little bit of history. She was actually one of my musical educators way back in the day. Not too far back, obviously.
Pretty far back, right?
But back far enough. And so when I was at originally St. Mary's and then eventually St. Michael's, once the two schools combined, she was our choral director. And we didn't have a band, really. We had everybody sang. And even if you couldn't sing, you still sang. So, but it did have a huge impact on me starting out because you were really the first person that kind of got us as a group singing. You know what I'm saying? Like, you were the first one that said, hey, this kid can kind of sing a little bit. And that kind of really catapulted things for me forward, musically speaking. So, Marcia, thank you for having an impact on my early musical upbringing.
You are so welcome. Yeah, those years, I totally remember, Ryan, you coming in with the little vest and the bow tie. I mean, I have vivid memories of that. One other memory, too, I'll embarrass you with. I think one Christmas we were singing a certain song, and you printed out all the lyrics that I had forgotten because I was only giving you guys two, verses. Right. And you came in as like, Mrs. Gallagher, there actually are more verses to this song. It was like, okay, first grader, okay.
All right. That's too funny. And and I don't feel embarrassed by that at all. That's too funny. Actually, I'm happy you remember that because I remember the vest and the bow tie, and after that, it's not too much there for me.
Hey, we had a good time.
We did.
We did. That was a lot of fond memories of those years. Yeah, for sure.
Most definitely. And I mean, it was anything from, like our choral singing of more standard, traditional, like madrigal type stuff or older type stuff, but also bringing in new stuff. Like we even did, some Five for Fighting. There was a Katy Perry song in there, maybe, or some more modern pop, modern rock stuff, as well as some of like the classic stuff, which was really unique, especially for me. Being young and getting new into the musical world, so to speak, right? And learning recorders or whatever it may be.
I mean, a lot of the newer stuff, I mean, that was directly came from the students,
right?
They would say, hey, we want you to look at this song, and they all knew that we had certain parameters that we had to follow, as far as lyrics and things. And
I have to keep it PG, all that type of stuff.
But I always wanted to listen to the students to see what would make them happy about doing what we're doing. So yeah.
So when did you first get into music yourself, Marcia? Were you like music was my thing all the way from the beginning, or was it a slower journey?
No, I would say that I was probably one of those kids. I was the youngest of 5. And coming from a musical family, all of my siblings were taking piano lessons.
Okay.
So the story goes, as they would be sitting down to practice and struggling through some of their, 5-finger scales and things, I would then jump up on the piano bench and play what they were supposed to have been playing, which really irritated them. So my mother said, well, maybe I should give her lessons even though she's so young. So I actually started piano lessons very young, like I think I was 4 or 5, which I don't even recommend taking students at that age. I don't, for myself, I think it's a little young, but
right.
I had it in me. There was just something about it.
It was like Marcia was musical. I mean, the name and they kind of rhyme and hitch off each other
the
there.
Alliteration,
but it just works. And so that's interesting. So you had all musical family, musical siblings, and it kind of played out in a certain way where you were able to kind of show them up, so to speak.
Yeah, and also too being we're from northern Maine, we were kind of isolated on a farm, and so great way to pass time.
Right. What part of you're from Aroostook County? What part of Aroostook County are you up?
Yes, yeah. Fort Fairfield.
Fort Fairfield. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have family from Van Buren, and then from over Fort Kent, Eagle Lake side too.
Yeah.
It's a small world up in the Aroostook County.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, you definitely, I think that as a child, I had more time on my hands like than kids do now.
Right.
Kids are kept so busy and, in good reason, this lesson and that lesson, and everybody's exposed to a lot of things. But, mine was a little more of a smaller circle. So music was definitely something I could grab onto and just practice
And was a
hours and
dominant
hours.
part of your life and of that circle, right? And makes sense. I mean, like
Yeah.
most of the folks, like talking with, Tony Gabriel. He talked about in his young, when he was starting off playing guitar, he would just practice and practice and practice, and it came from and he said the same thing that you said. It came from a little bit of a different time because now, I mean, like we have cell phones, to even look up sheet music, for example, right? Like you say a song and I can have the chords for you in like 2 seconds versus having to have the sheet music and things, whole different setup and system now.
Yeah, and I also think too, as far as being a personality type that is willing to do things over and over again. That's another common musician
Most
thread,
definitely.
Yeah, we're willing to sit in a room and practice and work on that one thing over and over again. And
Even
and
if it
again, it
drives you
takes
crazy,
and
right?
but it takes time again,
Exactly.
but I think patience also goes along with that. I'm a fairly patient person,
Yeah, most
as you
definitely.
probably can
As
remember.
I can. And you put up with a lot of our, I'll say, stuff, but yeah, no, most definitely. And patience is a huge part of it. I mean, I play myself, and if you're not patient, you're not going to learn the new lick. You're not going to learn the new fill. You're not going to learn you're not going to have that solo the way you want it, if or whatever it is. It
Absolutely.
doesn't matter
Right.
on that aspect. So yeah, growing up in Aroostook County with a small circle, resulted in you being able to, have this culmination of music, right? So that's really unique and really interesting, and I didn't realize that your upbringing was so musically focused, but makes sense, right?
Yeah, and then also too the Irish part of the heritage with the family, that we would get together for like what they call ceilidhs or hootenannies,
Yeah.
musical parties.
Yes.
So we'd get together, and there would be piano and banjo
Right.
and fiddle, and we do there's a lot of Irish music going on, and
Mm-hmm.
so for me, I would you'd sit and listen and sing. And I eventually got to the point where I could actually play, chording on the piano, because, of course, my upbringing was reading music, as
Right.
a lot of little kids are,
Right.
So that kind of came, after.
Right. Yeah, and that's interesting that you say that the Irish ancestry too, because I remember when we were, or when you were our instructor at the time at St. Mike's, or our director at St. Mike's, with Mr. Hickey, we went over to the veterans home, and we did it at Christmas time with Christmas carols. But for that 1 year, he decided to change it up or do something a little bit different, and he decided to do it for St. Patrick's Day as well. I know his mom was over at the vets home and whatever, but I remember he asked you to get some like the Irish Rover and a few of those very traditional,
That's
or
right.
Irish songs. And so that's an interesting parallel too, and that almost in part explains why you're so rooted in that as well, because
Yeah.
it's
We
rooted
did,
in you.
yeah, and we did that more than 1 year too.
Yep,
That was
did
a
you? Yep,
standard thing that
oh, it was okay. That's
Mr. Hickey
excellent.
had going. Yeah.
Oh, that's excellent. Yeah.
Yeah, and those are fun. I mean,
most definitely.
that traditional kind of music, I've always felt that was an important part of student, learning, as well, as you learn some of these traditional songs, in addition to the fun, the pop stuff, the
Right.
current stuff is what's going on. But
Yep.
it's really nice to think about, oh, somebody sang this song, many years ago, and it's still continuing today.
Oh
That's
yeah,
kind
and I
of
mean, it may be somebody's different version or different cover, or they do this verse a little bit differently or whatever, but it's still like the lyrics are still there and they've survived. And that's, I think, a really cool thing about music, is that even if you look back at some of your even like Gregorian chant stuff from way back in the day, like even some of those lyrics still kicked around for a couple hundred years after like the original piece had even been released. And it's amazing how things hold on. If people find meaning and some type of proliferation in the words, they keep them. Or, maybe they influence their own
yeah,
individual personal writing,
Yeah.
which is really unique at the same time. So starting out, who would you say some of your musical influences were, other than, like the cultural family side of things, like in terms of like the world around you? Would you have any, influences there, or even today?
Well, I mean, I think that my musical influences have changed.
Right,
You know,
as they do.
Of
Yeah,
course, I mean, I had a piano teacher for years until I was probably 16, so she was quite influential on actually getting me to read music, in the
right.
correct way. And then as I got away from the reading stuff, and I wanted to be more, singing and that sort of thing, I would listen to, I know Joni Mitchell was kind of an influence, just like the pop music of that time,
Like
kind of folky pop music,
Carole
I would say.
King,
Yeah, a little
yeah, a
bit.
little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah. So I always kind of, because I switched to guitar as well
Right.
when I was in high school. And so then I was like singing and playing the guitar, John
Oh
Denver, and,
yeah, 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 yeah.
I mean, so, I mean, there were some pop influences, but a lot of times too, I'm just influenced on what is going
On
on
around you.
around
Yeah,
me
of
at the
course.
time. If I'm directing a show or, say if it's a theater production, well, wow, then that I'll dive into those 20 songs
Right.
and it's like,
Into that
wow.
world, right?
Yeah, and it's like, wow, look at all this stuff. So I don't know if I can pinpoint it to a certain person.
But it's changed as you've gone through life, and I mean that's with anything too, really. I mean that's my personal influences. Like when I probably told you back in the day, like my first album when my dad, I mean my dad, my first album my parents got me was Abbey Road. You know what I'm saying? And so that's gonna have influence on Maxwell's Silver Hammer has different influence on a 4 or 5 year old than it does now when you actually can listen to when you're a 3 year old. It's a fun kind of haha, they have the hammer noises in the background and someone's getting cracked over the head with a hammer or something, like you don't really, but as you get older, you understand things a little bit differently, and that's kind of interesting too with music as well.
Yeah, I know that because Dave Mallet was kind of an influence in kind of a funny way because he had, he's a Maine singer-songwriter.
Right.
And boy, I remember really like in high school when I was trying to, sing and play the guitar, that type of singer-songwriter stuff, that really influenced me a lot. I remember really sitting and listening to that for hours, and I did my hand at songwriting. It didn't go very far, but I did. I have written
You have
songs.
originals out there.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But for me, it was not a path for you know, being able to make money,
Right. So you have the success element there, right? Yeah, and it's
pay my bills.
right. We all have those. I know that too well. But no, that's interesting too because when I think of you, it's not just like like Marcia's a musician that plays with various groups. Now, like you are very much a music person. I should have mentioned that at the beginning. Also, very much a music personality too. It's like you'll go to Friday nights with Marcia. You know what I'm saying? It's more than just going to see somebody sing and play at a cocktail hour. It's like you have folks that kind of follow. And it's like, oh, it's Friday. Let's go see.
Yeah,
Let's go see.
groupies.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you said it, Marcia, not me. But yeah, no, that's true, right? In a lot of ways.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's I've always liked the combination
Hmm.
of being an entertainer performer and
And
also having the education side. Because, I mean, you can't just, for me, I couldn't just spend every day, all day just thinking about performing. It was
right.
nice to put my brain to something
Something
else.
else. And I mean, all ages too. I mean, like I saw you again directly with us at St. Mike's, and then I ran into you again later on when I was in high school for Chisel Whizzle, the longest running variety show in the country. A little plug there. And then again when I was, even applying for different high schools. And I mean, before I decided to go to Coney, I applied to Kents Hill, and I ran into you out there too. So it was like, it's like you got to occupy your time, somehow. And again, it's not just with like the first graders; it was with K to literally 12. And probably you had some college students. Did you have some college students too?
Actually, yeah, I've worked at UMA
Oh, did you?
for 20 years.
All right. Well, that was
Yeah.
later. Yeah. Oh,
I'm still there.
So K2 all the way through.
And any age, really. I mean,
Yep.
because privately I've taught, I'm,
Right. And also piano lessons and voice lessons and lessons.
yeah, yeah. So it's not as much of a pinpointed, focused area of education as just to
A broad
what can I
spectrum.
do
Yeah.
to help this group or to help this person,
Right.
or yeah.
Or whatever that may be. And that's unique too, because again, you get different musical experience from someone who's 5 versus different musical experience from someone who's 35, and that's nothing wrong with either of that. Because again, just starting out their music journey or maybe continuing their musical journey. It must be interesting. And again, it keeps things interesting for you as well, because it's not like, oh, I'm going to be teaching these kids that have no musical talent whatsoever, or, they're just starting out, or whatever it may be. Or, it's a little bit different because I'm playing with someone or, working with someone who's played for a few years. It's all different experience and perspective too.
Yeah, and I've always said that I figured I must have a little ADD because I've never wanted to have the same job. I like that idea
The unknown,
of doing
yeah.
something. And I always say to my students, it's like, don't ever say no. If somebody asks you, hey, do you want to direct this? Or I might have never directed before, but
Sure, I'll give it
I'll give it a
shot.
try.
Yeah.
And that's really, I think that for, especially for someone who, wants to have music as a profession, is that it's harder, I think, to look at just one avenue and say, I'm going to do this one avenue. But if you open yourself up to different things, then, it's just a little easier to be employed.
Yeah, no, that well, that's no different than when you're in school and they say try to be as, diversified as possible, right? It's the same thing in the music world, right? And it's, can you teach? Can you do this? Can you do that? And the ability, once you know how to do something, you can take that to the next level, really, right? Whether it comes to showing somebody else how to play guitar or, teaching somebody how to sing or play piano, right? It's not just limited to one area by any means.
Yeah, well, that's certainly, in my case, I think
That's true.
would be true.
Yep. That's interesting. So what other places have you taught? I know I mentioned Coney, St. Mike's, UMA. Where else have you spent some time?
Right. So when I started, I was definitely private.
Yep.
I used to
Solo,
travel
yep.
like in my early 20s, or I don't even know, I probably was maybe even in my teens, but I would travel to people's homes and just teach piano lessons. And then, so that definitely worked into being able to join, get a band and do that sort of thing. Then it kind of morphed, into the schools, so it went into that section. So I've been private, it was K-8, high school, college, pretty much. I mean, that's
Pretty much all the way through from when you started. It just kept running with it, didn't stop, right?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And so did you prefer, or do you have a preference between private and or like in the public setting? Like going into the classrooms, do you have a preference, or is it just all of it's good? Because as you said, you like being dynamic, or is it just all in good fun regardless?
Someone made a comment to me one time, and I liked it because I had really been exclusively doing private lessons. And she said one thing about now that you're going to step into a classroom is that you can directly affect more kids.
Okay.
And
that's
that is
true.
so true.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, those 20 students or whatever that you take a year that you're coaching, okay, those 20 kids are affected. But if I remember at a point I was teaching at St. Mary's and St. Augustine's,
Right.
and UMA, I think there was a overlap, and I remember saying, I believe that it was like over 300 students a week
Right.
that I would see, so it's like, wow, you think about that, that's a lot of influence,
Most definitely.
but that also makes you understand why I couldn't remember some of the names.
That makes more sense now. Now that you tell now that you tell me that you had 300 students a week, Marcia, I don't feel so bad anymore.
A lot of times it's like, hey, if I can get your parents' name or your last name, that's good.
That's pretty darn good.
That's pretty darn good. Or your brother or your sister,
Things must have gotten pretty busy for you around like the holiday. I know we had the Christmas concert just at our school, let alone, well, St. Augustine's probably had their own, and then your private something. Kids would play or do something, you know what I'm saying? Do something. I'm sure like some of the holiday seasons, graduation times must have been pretty busy.
Yeah, holidays, particular, of course,
Yes.
being in Catholic schools.
Yeah.
The holiday time was busy, but yeah. And also too, that's a typical time that people decide they're going to hire a musician to play
Hey,
for
you want
a
to play our Christmas party?
right?
Yeah.
A Christmas party, yeah. Holiday party.
Part of it. Yes, that's right. That's right. But that must create a different dynamic too, right? Because again, you could have your day that you're working with the kids in the morning, and then you're going to go play Slates or somewhere down in Hollowell. More adult,
That's right.
Not exclusively adults, but more featured towards them.
But that's why
that's why
I
you do.
like,
Yeah.
that, because I remember there was a point too where I was just doing, gigs.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, wait a minute, I have too much free time.
Too much time
I
on your
mean, if you're
hands.
only playing in the evening and an occasional afternoon, what am I doing with the rest of my time? So that was when I really started saying, okay, I can really start teaching more and, diving into school.
Right. Yeah. Because
that sort of
if you
thing.
have the time, better to be doing something with it and in a productive light too, no less, and also making a little extra money never hurts, especially as we know with our musicians. They like a little extra money from time to time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
That's interesting. And so, when you got into more of the directing element now, did that start because of in school, directing shows, and did that come from being in the schools and they needing somebody with music experience, or did that come, hey, I want to take, like you were saying, if you get the opportunity to direct, where did that come about? Because I know that you've directed a good portion of performances that I've been in and other folks.
So let's kind of gear that into more theater kind of
Right. Yes.
aspects. So I would say that was in my either probably 30s or 40s that Gaslight Theater,
Okay.
I remember, came to me and they said, we're going to put on a musical and you have to direct. And it was like, I don't know. I don't know if I really
You don't
want
really
to.
have an option here, Marcia.
I don't
Sorry.
know. I've never really done that. I don't really, So I started with that. And then, so I definitely dipped my toe into being the musical director for local theater. And also I had the privilege to do theater at Monmouth
I was
as
going to
well.
say, I remember you having a hand in that there
Yeah,
as well.
and work with more, that's an equity house, so
Yep.
that was very fun to do that. And then of course what you were referring to, the Chisel Whistle, that was a high school production.
Yes.
And that was kind of a friend of mine was the music teacher, and again, she was like, okay, I need a break. And so I'm telling you that you now have to do that. And again, me not knowing anything, I said yes. And, certainly that first year of that, I was like a little over my head because I had the encompassing view of that. It was bigger and I'd never done that.
It
But
felt a little heavier than...
but I loved it though. I
Right.
mean, by the end of it, I felt like I had it right down. It's like, okay, these are the lights, this is the staging, this is the, and so you get more of an overall vision. I have to say that I do like that type of work because of that. You can get more of a vision going. Okay, what's my end product going to be? And then you kind of work backward and, you make it all work together. So those projects are really fun.
Yeah, and most definitely. I've only been involved, in a few of those, because we did even, when we were at St. Mike's, we did your own adaptation of the Charlie Brown Christmas story, with the little tree and everything like that. Like that was half musical, half, given with lines and, that type of thing, which
Right.
you had your own hand in. You changed some of the original songs around and stuff, which was really cool, but you made a hip hop version of Hark the Herald Angels Sing, which was unique. And you put your own unique spin. I still even remember that, you know what I'm saying? You put your own unique spin on it,
Yeah, I do tend to do that. It's funny. Even now, I'm doing a project for UMA right now because now we've switched to online learning.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of doing a vocal group like I used to do, that people would come and rehearse with me and then we'd perform, we're doing it all online.
Okay.
So I've got this Michael Jackson song and I've got an arrangement. But as soon as I look at that arrangement, I go, yeah, no, this is not going to work. So then I start messing with it because I guess it's just the way I am.
I'm for it.
I just can't seem to I should just take that. That would be less work for me to just use that the way it is. But I go, oh, yeah, no, that's not what I want.
Right.
So I'll use it as a framework and then just do my own thing after that.
There's nothing wrong with that. Not at all. As far as I'm concerned, again, that's what I was getting back to when I was talking about influences before. It's I may, really like, for example, Roger Miller did a version of King of the Road. And also Dean Martin has a version of King of the Road, right? They all have covers off of covers off of covers, but I like the way Dean Martin sings the song, but I like the instrumentation of the country, version versus more of a standard version or more of the crooner-esque version, So again, it's combining two different things that are similar. Again, similar ideas, still maintaining that same element and identity of a pop song, right? But just with a different twist.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what we musician folk, we just do that. We just borrow from each other and, adapt and change. And again, it's not because we want to show disrespect to what came before or anything like that. It's just, it simply comes from a place of, this would be cool, this sounds good, at least for me. I can't, maybe, I don't know for you if it's the same or not, but at least for me, when it comes to adapting and changing things.
Yeah, I cover a lot of music in my gigs because I don't do a lot of, original songs. And that is definitely, one of the fun aspects is that you can take it and make it your own.
Right.
Sometimes I will, like I have been known to, transcribe stuff, so I am doing it exactly the way that, I have this jazz tribute show that I do, and so I talk about different women of jazz, and a lot of the songs that they do, I take the actual transcription and I sing it the same way that they sang it on a certain recording, just to kind of give honor to that particular,
Yeah, most definitely.
Person. But a lot of times it's kind of more fun to make it your own.
Make it your own. No, most
Yeah.
definitely.
Expressive,
Right, and I mean, it's one thing to get up there, as like, a musician or as a guy, you can get up there and sing a Johnny Cash song deep and low, like I'm Johnny Cash, like that. You can do it like that, or you can just kind of make it your own, right? And then again, there's nothing wrong with a little bit of imitation, but again, if you make it your own, it's your art at that point, borrowing from somebody else, but kind of, again, making it your own. And that kind of segues me into my next point. When you're doing gigs, do you remember back what your first gig was?
Oh, of course. You mean paid?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was at...
When you became a professional.
Well...
You know what I mean? Technically, Marcia, once you get paid, you do become a professional. That's...
Yeah. So, I mean, because I actually, probably in high school, I actually started getting, paid, because I would do things like, the Potato Blossom Queen pageant. And
that's a big deal.
They might give me $25 or $50 or something. I don't even remember. Or I might have volunteered to do that.
Right.
But, and I also remember actually being at church, too. I was the organist at the Catholic Church when I was a freshman in high school, and I did that all through my high school years. And I would get $100 at the end of the year.
Okay. Yeah, it's for
the entire...
whole,
yeah. So $2 a Sunday.
You could spend the $2 a little bit better, though. I mean, especially, up your way. I mean, it's just, I don't know.
But the one when I really started, like, I was in college, and that was when I decided I was going to, kind of gig a little more, was at a place called the Orinoco, which was a place outside of the University of Maine at Orono campus. And it was, I think I shared the gig with another gal, and I was playing guitar and singing, and I think I got $25 for that. Yeah, so that really was my first. I very much remember that gig, as being my first gig.
And that's interesting because, again, talking with, other musicians, you always ask, hey, what was your first gig? Everybody, remembers. It's like almost like asking a bank robber, hey, what was the first, bank you robbed? It's like fresh in their mind every time. It's like, I don't have to think back. And I mean, some of my musician friends have... Their brains are a little bit sharper than others. I'll just put it like that, as you know. And then but it's amazing. First thing, bam! I remember exactly what my first show was, or whatever that insert event here, right?
Yeah. Well, influential.
It most definitely is, and I mean, it can really, for some folks, set the tone for things going forward. Sometimes you catch lightning in a bottle and you take off. But that being said, is it difficult? In the last year, adapting things. I know you just mentioned that, online learning, that's something that is a little bit more readily and available. But, like gigs, for example, right, really kind of evaporated over the last... I mean, obviously, you've been doing more. I follow you on social media and everything like that. So I know, like, now that things have opened up a little bit more, been able to get back out there again. But what were you doing during the the lockdown period? Were there certain online options where people playing together or doing like little happy hours or anything online, or what did you find yourself doing gig wise in that last year?
Yeah, well, what COVID hit in March, so the last summer was pretty much most people were just we were available to do outside gigs.
Yep.
And that definitely happened.
Yep.
Definitely, from the coastal stuff to even playing here locally at Slate's, outside, we could all be sitting outside.
Yep.
So that really worked last summer. But then, of course, it really dried up, when it got
It got
cold
cold. Yep.
because they weren't allowing people to sing inside, except in really particular, interesting situations. But most people did not do that.
Yep.
So, yeah, I went that winter without doing any gigs. A former student of mine called me and said, "Hey, let's do an online live show." So we probably did 3 or 4 of those. That was with Hallie Elwell. And that was really fun. I dragged in my friend Katie Daggett. She did one, and then Christine Polson. So there was 4 of us at the end, and those were super fun
Most definitely, I'm
and
sure.
fairly well watched.
Yep.
I was really surprised. And it was like, really, over 1,000 people have watched this?
Oh,
I mean,
I'm sure. Yeah.
it just so we just had a blast doing it. We learned along the way, and there's certainly still more to learn. I kind of think that might be what's going to happen.
This winter.
Yeah,
I'm with you on that. Yeah.
I don't know if we're going to be all going back inside for restaurants and
I'm not that optimistic about it, just from what I've heard and what I've seen and folks I've talked to that know
yeah.
things. It's
Yeah, I
not.
mean, I like the vaccination thing, like the theaters.
Oh yeah, no worries, you're good.
The theaters thing, that they're requiring people to be vaccinated. Or before you go to a show, you have to have a negative COVID test
Yeah.
or all that kind of thing.
I
But
actually just did that. I was down at Dead and Company down in Mansfield last past weekend, and pulled out my card. Yep, good to go in. The negative test thing, and it worked great. And I mean, it's not perfect by any means, obviously, but even standing around, I mean, Mansfield sits 20,000 people, Marcia. Even being in a crowd, and it was sold. I mean, when the Deadheads assemble, they assemble, in force.
oh yeah,
And I mean, that place was pretty much sold out that night. I mean, we had very little space in between us, and I didn't feel that psyched out or anything like that. It made me feel a little bit more comfortable knowing that, well, at least most everybody around me, from what I can tell, is safe. Right?
absolutely.
And I'm sure that create. I mean, even in a smaller setting like Slates or the Wharf or wherever you're playing downtown, Hollowell or wherever you're playing in general. I mean, it is a little bit more different when they have to follow the indoor. And again, it gets so cold in the wintertime, it's different. We're lucky these warm months we can be outside. I've even gone down to Slates and seen some few live shows outside. But again, this winter does concern me, for not only for myself and other people, but for my musician friends. It's scary to have your livelihood kind of almost yanked out from underneath you in a lot of ways. Not completely, obviously, right? As you said, like, I love hearing the stories too, Marcia, about the people who had like the online shows. Like, those little beacons of hope that are really make you feel good about all the bad stuff that happened. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I've said right along that this whole pandemic, yeah, there are definitely downsides, but there have been some really
There's really good
upsides
Yes,
as well.
most definitely.
I mean, everybody, first of all, has all become much more familiar with technology. Okay?
Kind of had to be.
It's like, because I was kind of floundering around in that going, do I really want to teach online? And then there was no choice. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to dive in and this is what I'm going to do. And I have been very much enjoying it.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. I mean, I don't go into school at all now. I'm teaching completely from my home.
Oh, yeah.
And so but it works.
Most definitely.
For me. I mean,
Yeah.
it wouldn't work if I had small children running around, but right now I
It's
can,
working pretty
yeah, I've
okay,
got all
yeah.
the technology with the cameras and everything, and it's working out okay.
Yeah, that's excellent. And I mean, again, you teach very different age groups. So again, you have different levels of technology use. But I'm glad that things are working out for you, because I know when I talked with Tony a few months ago, he was like, these, sometimes with the guitar there's a delay, and he was being a little bit more nitpicky about it, with that type of stuff, because maybe that might just be in the world of guitar too. I don't know. But do you have any problems with like delays with the key if you're teaching keyboard or voice or anything? But things are going pretty good on that front.
Yeah, because there is definitely 2 approaches to teaching. When you have someone coming into your studio or they're beside you and you're teaching, a lot of times you're either playing with them. Hey, you're going to play the guitar on this one part. I'm going to play on this other part. So we're going to play together. Or, I might play the piano and someone sings.
Right.
So that for me has gone away. So what it's more turned into is like, okay, here is your concept. This is what it's going to be. And they're doing it on their own on their end. So I either send them recordings that they need to set up like a Bluetooth speaker or something. So the recording is going and then they're singing. So
Yep.
there's no delay,
Gotcha. Yep.
no latency.
Yep.
So that is how I have gotten away with it. And
Gotten around it or beaten it, so to speak.
yeah, and then in my piano class that I do at UMA, it's all done asynchronous. So,
Oh, beautiful.
so videos have already been made.
Yep. Everything
And
lines right up perfectly. Yeah.
they're just listening to me
Yep.
talk, and they see my hands, and they go, okay, this is the skill, this is what you got to do, and they can rewind it,
Yep.
play that same thing again, 5-minute clip. Okay, now it's their turn.
Yep.
So it puts the onus more on the student,
Okay.
which
So it
I'm
puts the
finding is
ball-
very
yeah.
interesting.
Puts
Yeah.
the ball in somebody else. It's not always in the old traditional sense of education. The ball would always come back to the educator, to the teacher. When in this puts the ball a little bit more in the student's court. Which again, I don't think there's anything wrong with that personally. It does force a little bit more accountability, right? In a lot
Absolutely.
of ways, and I think
Yeah.
that's definitely unique. Especially it also forces you to practice a little bit more.
It does. Because if you're going to send me a recording of whatever, you playing something or singing something, it's probably not going to be the first recording that you sent.
No.
So, like, some people will tell me, because I'll say, be honest, they'll say, okay, I did this about 20 times before I found even something close. So that process is so good for learning. It goes
There's
back
that
to
repetition
what
element.
we
Yeah.
were talking about earlier. It's like, okay, so you do have to repeat it enough that you get comfortable enough that you can make a recording that you're not embarrassed to send to your teacher.
Right, and I mean, I even took in college. I took I had some extra time my senior year, so I was able to take a music theory class and take
Okay.
an actual voice class. Just one-on-one, not like the big group. For the first time in my X amount of years of doing music and
Yeah.
singing, I finally
Fun.
said, "All right, finally, I'm going to do theory. I'm going to because I played drums. I didn't really, I understood like reading vocal music, but again, when it came to understanding more of your dominant and major chords and that the real technical side of stuff, which I have interest in, just never really had an opportunity, was always busy doing sports and this, that.
Sure.
I mean, I had more time on my hands. I blew out my ACL. I blew my knee out. And so I was repairing from that. I played rugby in college for some crazy reason. But anyway, it gave me more time to focus on music, which I think was very, very much needed and very much appreciated.
Yeah. Lifelong pursuit.
Oh yeah, most definitely. I mean, it's always been there for me. You know what I'm saying? It hasn't. I mean, in some moments, I wish I made it my main focus. In other moments, I'm happy that I didn't. I'm just glad it's there.
Absolutely.
And that's the beautiful thing about music. It is always there, and I definitely think we have more joy, not only in our more tough moments, as a community, but just in general when we have, access to this, to this type of stuff. I mean, I feel even better just being able to say I went and saw a concert a few days ago, or be able to see live music makes me a happier, better person.
Music is it's a way of sharing emotion, and it's a lot of healing qualities for sure.
Oh, most definitely, and I mean that's why you see music so heavily used in a lot of therapies now, and other things like that. I know that, or even something as simple as going. Have you ever been in one of the sensory tanks? Like you basically just float in complete darkness, and they play. You have a headset with music. They even use.
Did you do that?
I haven't done it before.
I was gonna say it sounds great.
One of my close buddies has done that, and he rants and raves. I mean, but there's a music element involved with that too. It's really unique.
Yeah,
really unique. And what we cling to, for our music, we almost have even regionally in our country, music that is just, sprung up because of just how we congregate together. Similar to when you're talking about some of that Irish music that came over, or some of those different elements that have really translated into our local music scenes, popping up from different communities, as you see, across the state. I say Maine is really a unique place when it comes to local music, because while we're such a small state, we put out a lot of really big talent. In a lot of ways, maybe they're not, signed, on the Billboard Hot 100. You know what I'm saying? But in terms of just quality of musicianship, it's really cool to see so many talented people like yourself come out of,
thank you.
Come out of, I mean, literally, you came out of Aroostook County. You know what I'm saying? But
yeah, I'm not sure if it's completely unique to Maine. I agree that we have some
I'm biased too,
great
so.
musicians. But, traveling around and just I mean, people can study music and be from
Wherever. That's true. That's true.
and
Like I said, I'm biased.
and I think that's always an underlying, there's, the top, how many percent that actually become recognized and are, your bigger musical stars. But then what about the rest of the 97% that covers all the gigs and the schools and the churches and the music and the the restaurant. I mean, so there's a lot of people in the industry
Yes.
that don't get a lot of
that's
recognition.
And that's part of the reason I'm doing this too. I mean, I said on my first episode, like, I want to give like people that may not end up on a talk show or end up on a whatever, I want to give them that opportunity too, because their craft, their art needs to be helped pushed out too. And as much as I'm trying to build my own reputation, my own name, I'm also trying to help those other folks, because they provide. We don't think about the service they provide, but they do very much provide. People like yourself provide a service. Entertainment.
It's a service industry.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
It's just the one of the most service-based industries. When you think about it, it's like, all right, what's this one thing that's going to put us over the top when somebody has a party or something? Oh, let's hire a musician. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I've done that myself. I hired Archie. From you obviously know Archie.
Yes,
running
of
around.
course.
Yeah, he came and did a solo gig for us, and it was great. It's great to have that dynamic and it creates just a more unique dynamic inside your own happening and event. You know what I'm saying? That too. So again, like I said, music is just such an awesome force, and I'm glad you appreciate it. I appreciate it, and that we can continue to put it out there for people. So you think that more gigs are going to be more towards the digital side this winter, more so than not?
Yeah, and I think we'll see what the requirements are.
Right, that's true too.
Right, but I think, that some places, they are going forward. Some of the bigger venues are going forward with the vaccination cards or the negative COVID test.
Yep.
So I think that if you're on that level, those things may still happen until someone shuts them down.
Right.
But hopefully that can kind of, I think, show us the way. It's like, okay, we can get together safely by doing these particular precautions.
Most definitely. And I think that's the important part, because again, I know I couldn't in my right mind be up on a stage trying to play music and, with it not being safe for folks. You know what I'm saying? Like, that kind of weighs on, I mean, sure, it weighs on you when you get up there from time to time.
Well, I don't necessarily put myself in that position, but I have been working with a guy, John Wicks, who is from Fits and the Tantrums. It's a band.
Yeah. Oh, I know Fits and the Tantrums. Yeah.
And, he was saying that, they were on tour and it does weigh on you. It's like you're thinking, are we bringing people together? And then there's going to be some kind of, an
Spike or
outbreak
something,
from what we did. And that's kind of a heavy, responsibility as well.
With great power, great responsibility, and certain, not to be cliche, but in a lot of aspects, right? I mean, like, I get that, and I don't know, it's maybe not to be like, no, I'm not trying to sound like a worry wart, or anything like that, but just mindfulness, I guess, is what I'm pushing out there.
Yeah, caring for other people, I think, is a
little
lot.
bit of empathy goes a long way.
I think that's what it, but as far as local, I think that we will all just follow the requirements.
Do what we got to do. Yeah. Yep.
Like what I had liked at one place I was playing down at Easy Street was he put up plexiglass, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 sheets of plexiglass in front of me, because the idea, right, is that singers will
There's a little bit of spittle there. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
and so it was a way to protect the audience, and then if everybody sits down and they don't mingle, so we were trying to make things as safe as we could. And I suppose if it came back to that, we'd just throw that back up.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember going down to Slate's and seeing a gentleman with harmonica and guitar, and he looked like he was behind like a clear shower curtain.
That's exactly what he was behind.
Yeah, right. It's like but it's like, I love the ingenuity of it. It's like, this works. You know what I'm saying? This allows someone to still get up on stage and sing, still get up on stage and do their thing, but also keeping, whoever's eating and dining to do their thing too.
Right.
I mean, it looks kind of funny, but but it does work.
But I mean, of course, I think that was more of a, hey, let's see what we can do to make people feel better. Now that we know that it probably was just drifting around anyway, it didn't really matter. But hey, you know what? We're making an effort.
Yes, and I think that's the important bit of it, is that the effort has been made. It's not like, oh, we're just going to, this COVID thing sucks, we're just going to sit on our hands see you guys in 2 years, bye. Like, no, like, they're trying to make it work.
Right.
Because, and again, this part of what goes into music. There's always hope in music a lot of the times. I mean, there obviously is some hopeless music out there too, I guess. But, I even remember you teaching us, about certain, for example, like slave songs back in the day, when they were in the cotton fields, singing for hope. So, I mean, I think that's kind of unique, unique to that as well. And I think that it's kind of, like I said, there's definitely been some good messages of hope that have come out of this regardless. And I hope things continue to chug on in an appropriate way and things don't get shut down again, because like I said, I still hope to be able to go out and grab a beer and see some live music this winter.
Yeah,
So,
safely. Yeah.
yes, of course. Yeah, exactly.
And unfortunately, I think part of the digital offerings, like you said, do you think that, you'd go back to that? I mean, I think that not everyone is either comfortable with that or
Right.
wants to learn the technology that goes along with that.
Because there's a learning curve, right?
There is a
Yeah.
learning curve, and so some people are just like, no, I'm just going to wait, and that's totally their
That's their choice.
discretion,
Yeah.
right? But I don't mind. I found it kind of fascinating.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah.
wow, wait a minute, I can do a show from my home, and I've got slippers on.
Yeah.
I didn't have to drive anywhere.
don't have to drive home after.
Lug my
Yeah.
piano. I was
Right.
like, well, that's pretty easy.
That's a pretty good deal, actually. Yeah, you can literally like roll out of the chair into bed. But we're done.
Yeah, yeah. So everything
Yeah.
has its, its ups and
Downs,
downs.
yeah, most definitely.
Yeah.
So where do you find yourself playing most of the time these days? Are you still all over the place with things, or mostly in playing down in Hollowell?
Yeah, I mostly play in Hollowell. I don't, of course, over the years, I used to drive here and there. Bupe Harbor, I,
Oh, that's a
certainly
great
certainly
spot.
have
Yep.
been known to play down there. But it's easy for me to just play in my hometown.
Yeah,
I don't,
most definitely.
yeah, I mean, the drive is easier, and, it's
Right.
just,
Right.
I don't have a huge desire to go and drive for an hour
Or go to
more.
Portland or
Yeah.
wherever. Yeah.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
you have a good. I mean, whenever I've seen you playing out, you look like you're having a heck of a time. So why go anywhere? Why go anywhere further if you don't need to?
right,
Right.
if I can have a good time and make,
Make a couple bucks on while doing it.
Absolutely,
Yeah. No. Do you see?
absolutely.
Have you played downtown Augusta at all with some of the newer spots down there? Or
I was playing at Autos for a while
okay. Yep.
back. That was definitely pre-COVID.
Yep.
So they want to try music down there. But I think that's kind of all that's going on. I don't think that Kushnock, I mean, they, once in a while, I know a couple of friends that kind of had a work relation.
Yep.
They would play there. But
Well, I
I
know-
don't think that's
Well, I
like,
know like Tobias Parkhurst and a few other folks are going to be opening a wine bar down that last mill building that's down there.
they want to.
So that might
Yeah,
be
I
a
saw that.
future spot potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, your spots downtown Hollowell though, Slates, Easy Street or East Street, Easy Street.
Yeah, Easy Street.
Street.
Yeah. That's where I play. Although, I
Yep.
mean, I have played at the main house. I have played at the Liberal Cup.
Yep. Oh, yeah, all
I
over the
have
place.
played
Yep.
at the Wharf. At one point we had quite a few, venues in Hollowell. They've kind of, obviously shut down a little bit now. But
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that's really cool because I was going to ask you, so folks listening in, where can they see you play next, and where can they find you social media wise, website wise? What do you got going on
I
there?
pretty much just do Facebook just because it's so easy.
Oh yeah, most
It's
definitely.
easy and
So
it's,
just Marcia Gallagher.
yeah,
Yep.
it's not even a music page.
Yep. Just you. Find
Right,
you.
just find me, and I usually always post, where I'm playing. So that's probably the easiest thing, or people will send me a message to find out. But yeah,
Yeah, and I'll be sure to
that's the
tag you
easiest.
and everything here so folks can find you. And specifically, do you have a specific gig coming up that you'd like to promote?
Well, let's see. This week is, let's see, Thursday is at Slate's. That would be outside if it's a nice day, and inside if it's not. Friday is at Easy Street, and that's in Hollowell. And on Saturday, I'm doing something that is a little different. I have a friend who works at Shaw's Wharf in Bristol.
Oh yeah.
So I'm going down there
Oh, cool.
to fill in for her. So she's an old friend and asked me to do that. I said, well, that would be fun. And then after that, I'm going to Bodenham. They're having something I think called Bodenham Days.
Oh okay.
And so I'm playing in a band like before the fireworks.
Oh okay. Awesome. Well,
So-
that's excellent.
Busy weekend.
Yeah, no, most definitely. And like I said, I'll be sure to link all of your stuff.
Thank you. I
with
appreciate
this
that.
episode because again, trying to make sure we promote everybody here. You know what I'm saying? Make sure everybody knows what's going on and can find you.
Great.
So it would be great to keep people informed of where you're at, where you're playing, so they can give you, because it's one thing to listen to you and I chat, but it's another thing to hear you do what you do. So I highly recommend anybody in the area or, coming up to the area, give one of Marcia's shows a chance. Excellent stuff.
Thank you.
Marcia, thank you so much for coming on. This has been awesome. It's really been a great full circle day for me, getting to talk with my musical educator about music. So, like I said, thank you so much for coming on, and we'll have you back on here again, and hopefully I'll be down to see a show here again pretty soon. And so with that being said, we'll wrap things up this week. Marcia, thank you so much for coming on. And
Thank you, Ryan.
yeah, thank you. And we'll be back here in a few weeks, guys. Keep updated with all of our stuff on social media at DuView207 on Instagram and the DuView Podcast everywhere else, guys. All right, see you in another couple weeks, folks, and make sure you're tuning in, catching up on all our previous episodes. Don't miss out here, guys. The archive's over on YouTube. So with that being said, this is this week's episode of the DuView Podcast. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Have a great week.